Hello and welcome to the Absolute Game of Nerds with your non-geek, non-nerd hosts JP and Rohan. We believe we have episode 27. We're still in numeric order, and I'm excited to bring on a dynamic duo, not Rohan and his child, one of his kids, but Dave and Rachel from Future Past Vintage Collectibles. Welcome
Hello.
both of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so today we got Future Past, and one thing we want to shout out here is that we have Rachel, who is our first female guest, which is a big deal because, it is a male-dominated hobby. I think we all realize. JP's always like, we got to find some female guests. I'm like, I know. Do you know any? And we're both like, no. But now we do. We have Rachel, and we have David, not to take anything away from David, but they work together. They got a great show if you want to check it out. But guys, thanks for coming on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Oh, I'll also say you're also our first. This is the first time we've ever had more than one guest too. So look at that, two firsts.
We're just breaking all the records.
We're out
Yeah.
here.
Right.
Breaking all the records.
Ding,
So-
ding, 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 all the records.
We always start. Oh, and we also learned that they're fellow Washingtonians. So our second Washingtonian. So not too far from me. But
You're getting lucky. All these people are near you. No one's near me at this point. I'm over in Pennsylvania.
well,
no one's near
JP,
me.
when you live amongst people and not amongst the animals, like people
That's
become
true.
close.
I just
to you,
have
so-
Amish near me. That's it.
Yeah.
They don't call it the Great Northwest for nothing.
Yeah, where JP comes is at there's like people without electricity and running water and things
Oh,
like
no.
that. So,
Yeah, Amish.
That's awful.
yeah.
They don't like comics either.
So
That's worse.
we always kind of get started with an origin story. So why don't we get the origin story from? So Dave, why don't we start with you? Because I'm imagining Rachel's
Sure.
then kind of plays off of that. So why don't we start with you, Dave? And this is not selling. This is your love of comics. We'll start with. We'll get
Your
to the selling
personal.
part later. Yeah.
Sure. So one of the earliest photographs I have of me and my brother, and we actually use it on our YouTube channel. We do a show that is interviewing other collectors, and it's me and my brother sitting on the couch. I think I was 3 or 4. I had a Spider-Man in my hands, 1968. And my brother, it drives him crazy to this day. He cannot tell. He can't see the covers of those books, and he's just like wants to know because he's 2 years older than me, and is always my brother that got me into comic books. So not as time went on, he's always been the one that had the most intense or shall I say the stick-to-itiveness that I didn't with comics, because I would come in and out, and I think he has the first comic book he ever bought.
Oh
Really?
wow.
Yeah. I mean, and he'll tell you, walk into 7-Eleven to go buy a comic book and how excited he got. And this is in the 70s, So it was really my brother that got me into comic books, but we read different things. So I would get books and he would get books. And to my recollection, I don't remember whose were whose, but a lot of reprints and stuff. We were going back even in the late 60s and early 70s and reading, DC and all these origin stories that we didn't buy new. So that's what really got me into comics, is that it was always this ribbon that ran through my childhood, that while I read a lot of books and did a lot of other things, there was always comics involved. And my brother was ferocious on comics. He just never stopped collecting. We both read a lot, but he never stopped collecting. So as we get on doing this, I can talk about, like, I had some breaks.
Yeah.
Some long
Yeah.
breaks.
We'll definitely get it. So as a child, I mean, you were holding Spider-Man. What were some specific titles of books that you bought and read?
Yeah, so the stuff that I really gravitated towards typically was non-hero, or things like Plastic Man, which I don't know if you guys have ever read Plastic Man.
I've heard of it. I don't know much about it.
He's a DC guy, right?
He was the first Mr. Fantastic, okay?
Okay.
And I want you to know that everything good at Marvel was stolen from DC.
Well, I know a lot of the artists, like you see, like those prototypes. A lot of them are from was it Fantastic Four? I think there was like a prototype issue where they're in DC when Jack Kirby was there.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's no superhero team like the Justice League were the first superhero team. Brave and the Bold 28 was their first appearance. And really, Marvel was kind of late on the bandwagon with all this stuff, but they did a good job. They remind me of England with punk rock music. We didn't quite get it right. And when they did it, they nailed it, and we all loved it. That's what Marvel did with DC comic stories. As they died, and Stan Lee was able to really connect people to the humanity, of the people that were these heroes with Spider-Man and some other things that he did. Young people connected in a different way to comic books when Marvel really blew up, to me, which was the 60s. After Amazing Spider-Man, and especially if you look at like 68 and 69, when all those first issues came out with Iron Man, Submariner, Silver Surfer, all that stuff really, people just locked into it. And DC was not as popular, but when I was coming up, it was things like strange sports stories that showed up in Brave and the Bold at one time. I like, I don't know if you're familiar with that. I like the small runs. I like Showcase. I like Brave and the Bold, and I liked all horror comic books. Any horror comic book, which were watered down by the time I got to it.
Right.
So I did read EC reprints, even very young, but it was later on with Witching Hour, House of Secret, House of Mystery, Weird War Tales. You name it. If there was something spooky or scary in it, I was all over it. But I was a bit of a snob because I didn't really go into the other publications. It was just DC and Marvel. That's all I bought. I didn't buy Harvey. I didn't really buy any other publication. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, did you have a House of Secrets 92 when you were a kid?
No, I've never owned a House of Secrets. You got to rub that salt in the wound.
Well, I mean, you were just
thought by now you have
were into the House of the Secrets. I was like, well, he's got to have that.
It's funny because later on I'll talk about Grails, and I wouldn't say it's my Grail, but I will tell you I'm going to own one.
I mean, I've said on this show, I don't know, like it was prior to, a few months ago. It was a book I was like, oh, it's cool. Not something I want to chase. And now I'm like, no, I want that book. Like, it's just, It's so cool.
I think it's one of the best covers of the 70s.
100%. Like, I just love how you can see, like, I've mentioned before, like, you can see, like, the paintbrush strokes. I mean, it's just, it is gorgeous.
It's beautiful. And I was really attracted to that art. So it was artists that really got me. And I remember me and my brother being small kids talking about Jack Kirby, Neil Adams. So we were swept up in who was drawing these books. That's why you brought up Silver Surfer. That is some of the best art. Even going through any of the first run of Silver Surfer, the interior art, some of the interior art on some other books, because I read war books when I was a kid. As a matter of fact, most boys my age did. And people don't really collect that genre as much now. And there's not as much going on in war because war is kind of ugly in the first place. But it was such a big part of culture back then that I liked things that I could read one issue and not have to like think
Wait
long.
For the next,
And I don't know if you guys read 60s DC comics, but they were some of the silliest, goofiest stories. And they really weren't trying to keep any type of continuity. But I did like things like Bizarro, Super Pets. So, I read Archie and I read other things like that, but not with the ferocity that I did. Some of the stranger, I've always liked the weird stuff, the fourth world stuff, Commandy. I mean, I was always into like non-hero. Now I did read a lot of hero stuff, but it was non-hero that I really gravitated towards. So as a kid, we would swap these comics back and forth. The first comic I ever remember buying was A Witching Hour, and it was much later in the series. And I think I was 8 or 9, picking one up.
A memory.
It was at a grocery store, as a matter of fact. If you remember, grocery stores used to have 45s and comic books on spindles.
Okay. Yeah. I remember the comic books at the 7-Eleven. That's where I got my first comic book was there.
At 7-Eleven?
Cool.
Yep, 7-Eleven. Still have it now.
I have spent many an hour hanging over the rack at 7-Eleven looking at the books, which I don't think they sell anymore. I don't know when the last time 7-Eleven sold books. Yeah.
That 7-Eleven I bought from first is still there. It's had quite a bit of a makeover since that time, but my grandmother lived about a mile away from it, so she would give me money as a 6, 7, 8-year-old and say, "Here's $1, go buy a comic." Walk down with my buddy Jimmy, and we'd buy comics for $1 or $2. And,
so what do you remember buying? What do you remember?
I have Amazing Spider-Man 269 and 270 were I was captivated by the black suit Spider-Man, so I still have them now. Same copies from back then. So I was always a Spider-Man fan, but your tastes, like you said, over time have grown, have changed like yours did, but you always go back to that, what brought you into the into collecting. So from seeing your seeing your show, I know you really still go for those off the wall, we'll call them, books, the non
obscure.
That's what I like about that. Yeah, it's just they're different. You don't see them every day.
You know what's interesting about that? They may be obscure to someone who doesn't know, but if you know, you know.
Oh yeah, yep.
Right.
Yeah,
so you're looking at books with someone, and I love sitting down and looking at collectors' books, especially if they're books that I really like high grade comics, and I think that I collect high grade as much as I collect comics. It kind of doubles up the challenge that I need in order for a hobby to excite me, which is you have to go after things no one else can get.
Yeah, I've seen.
I mean, later on, I've been doing this for decades.
On that note, then, like if you saw like a Silver Age book that was like a, 9.4, would that interest you though, even if it was a title you're not collecting? All right.
Especially if it's a
I think Funny Animal is probably the only thing I would. It's interesting. There are file copies, and there are things that kind of glutted the market. When I mean by glut, if all of a sudden you have some mid-60s books that there's 12 of or 20 of, and they're all super high grade, it kind of takes the luster off.
Yeah. I always see like, especially with the horror kind of genre, like those Gaines Files copies.
Well,
and they're all like 9.6s and things like so.
They're so nice.
On the low side, right? So and the Gaines file copies have a history all their own, right? So they're a little different, but the same idea, because these are, and I brought an EC I'll show in a minute, but these are books, and my brother collects Gaines, right? So he's obsessed with it. Yes, there's 10 or 12 super high grade examples of all those books. And the question is, are there 13 people that want them?
Yeah.
That can afford them.
Yeah.
At the same time, right?
Yeah.
Because some of these books, even 3 years ago, were $2,000, $2,500 for 9.6s and 9.8s. And now those very same books are $6,000 and $7,000. So the answer is yes to both. The people have the money. And they weren't subject to like the comic boom stuff that was going on. They just chugged along and did what they do.
Yeah.
However, horror books, more than science fiction, but horror books have just exploded. I mean,
I hear about horror now. It's everywhere right now in the comic world.
So there's something about like condition that I would get excited about copies of Challengers of the Unknown if they were in 9.6.
Yeah.
And I don't like Challengers of the Unknown, but if you show me 9.6s, I start liking them right then.
Yeah. Now, do you have them all graded, or do you? I know you're pretty meticulous on your grading, and you like if I bought a book from you, I'd know what grade you said that was the grade you're going to get. Right? There's no messing around, because you seem like I've seen your pressing room. There's no joking around in there, right? So, so you talking 9.6? Are you going to get them graded, or you keep them raw? Does it matter?
It's changed. I would have told you 2 years ago that we're going to slab that book, and I'm not doing that anymore. So, and I have a long history of that. And I think later, as we talk, I can kind of talk about the slabbing I did in the very beginning of CGC, and things that led me to the conclusion that that's what you do. But actually, we've been selling super high grade books, not slabbed, and doing really well with them. And,
I've been hearing a lot of people right now are like the raw books are much hotter than slabbed books right now.
And that's like in the last few months, I feel like there's been a huge shift.
There has. Yeah.
I
really do think the comic boom, and when I say that, it should say the comic bust.
Again, another one.
What's that?
We had a first boom when I started collecting in the 90s. We had that boom then. So now we got a second one to deal with here in my collecting days. So,
well, I have to ask you a question about the first one in a second. I don't want to forget. But what happened in 2021, I think, especially it worked this way for me. It soured a lot of people on things that we felt we could rely on. Like if you get a book that's 9.8, that it becomes investment grade and someone else would want to invest in it. And that's not always the case. And some of these books went up by such large amounts of money and such a large percentage over previous sales that, and I'll use this as an example. Marvel Spotlight 5 selling for $250,000 in 9.8. And I think that was the 5th copy ever slabbed. I actually owned one of those. It might have been mine that was
wow.
sold. Because when I was the first person to ever slab a 9.8 Marvel Spot.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the first year of CGC, but yeah, wow, I didn't sell it for $250,000. And I did sell it on eBay, by the way, back in the day. But I think that if I was to evaluate that book today, I really don't feel like it would get more than $70,000 to $80,000.
Yeah, I mean, like you've even seen, like obviously there's way more of them, but like the Hulk 181 9.8 was like it peaked at like 138, and now it's down around like 63.
Yeah, well, and there's more 9.8s today than there was then.
Yeah,
and the census is not correct because a lot of people do not send their labels back like you're supposed to. So they would take that copy out, and I think a lot of people have cracked and resubmitted, right? And you see a lot of ghost books on there. So I don't think that you can rely on anything under 9.8 as being accurate.
Yeah,
so when it gives you the 9.8 count, who's cracking a 9.8?
Yeah, nobody. Yep.
I have one friend that would do that. He would literally crack it, put it in Mylars, and the first thing he does when he buys a book is he cracks it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. I have heard of it. I've heard of a few people that are like, I don't want them slabbed. I don't care. Like, so,
right.
You know, and I can respect that.
It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around for a second.
Yeah,
it is, especially a 9.8. Especially a 9.8.
Yeah, so
imagine doing that.
Yeah, so he doesn't even really like 9.8s because he collects mostly Golden Age or Atomic Age books, right? Books from the 50s and 40s. So for him, would he crack? As a matter of fact, he does have the House of Secrets 92, and it's raw, and it's a 9.8.
Wow.
Really?
But he bought that and never got it slabbed. He doesn't trust the post office. He doesn't trust CGC. He doesn't want anyone to press his books. So it's not that he minds a press book, but he's not doing it. So once he gets a book, he keeps it. And
I mean, JP and I talk about this a lot. Like, I can understand why sometimes, there's the premium on a graded book because it's like you never have to say goodbye to it, right? And it's like if you don't press it, then there's another added time to it, and there's added time to see. It's just like I totally like once I've sent out a few books, it's like I'm like checking every day, like on status updates, because it's like I just want to know, I'm checking the like delivery that
10 times there.
A day. Yeah, exactly. Like it's not something I enjoy. So yeah, I totally get it.
It's very stressful. It's a very stressful experience.
But if it wasn't for slabbing, if it wasn't for CGC, comic books would be nowhere near as valuable as they are today. That assurance of grade in the community was very important in a time, if you guys remember, there was a lot of restoration being done, and there was a lot of books coming to collectors from the people that originally bought them that took a felt pen to them when they were 13 years old, not knowing the difference. So people just weren't sure what they were getting. And especially as people started to use eBay, they'd get a book, it'd be restored. So, it made people really trepidatious. And even, really reputable dealers could still sell you a restored book and not know it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know that the staples were replaced, or they didn't know. And some of those books can be worth just a fraction, of what the value would be if it wasn't restored, where some can hold a lot of their value if they're incredibly rare or scarce. So that was really important that CGC came along and they blew up prices that you couldn't get before, you could after CGC started to get some traction. And I think that's, for instance, I don't think a raw copy of Marvel Spotlight 5 would have ever got $250,000.
Yeah, I mean, when we had Steve Borok on, who started CGC, he said that exact thing. He's like, I was one of the guys out there that was able to understand restoration and how to look for it and things like that. That's why they came to me, and that's one of the things that we had to protect against. And so that makes a lot of sense.
And that's probably the guy that did grade that book I sent in.
It probably is. It very likely is. Yeah.
He
remembers it.
He might. He was the man. I mean, so it's really interesting. We put so much focus on grading because to us, that's what people want in insurance. And other than CGC, how about the person you're buying from? Did they grade it correctly?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second, if you're not going to want a slab book, if you're going to buy a book, you want to get it from a dealer that's reputable, that will stand behind you.
I've said this multiple times, and I know it goes the other way, but in my personal experience, it just drives me crazy. Every person will always say the same thing. Oh, it's this, and I'm a conservative grader, and I'm just like,
famous last words.
Yeah, and then like I've gotten it graded, it comes back like 0.5 to 1.0 less. It's like, yeah.
Do you guys know Harley Yee? Do you know Harley?
I know of him. I don't know him personally. I've seen him obviously at every con that has ever been known to man.
He's probably one of the largest dealers in America. He doesn't have an online presence. He's strictly conventions.
Yeah.
He knows thousands of people. He's been doing this for decades. A guy like Harley, if he sold you a book and you got it and didn't like it, he's going to return it. I mean, he'll say return it and give you your money back. So
really?
You can, that's, I think, it's so important as a comic dealer to be reputable. And reputable doesn't mean you're right 100% of the time, but it should mean you do the right thing 100% of the time.
Right. Stand behind your book, stand behind your sale. Yeah, I agree with that.
It gets complicated, but if something gets ruined in the mail, that person may not have wanted insurance, or you know what I mean. And that's where I think the complications come in if you're buying or selling comic books. So, yeah.
So I was going to ask. We got a little bit of Dave. You're a new Dave or David? Which do you prefer?
Dave's fine.
Dave's fine. Okay, because I have a son named Michael. We call him Michael. It's not Mike. So I get it. So I just want to make sure. But Rachel, your background, right? Were you there from the beginning with Dave on the show, or did you get brought in? Like,
yeah. So we didn't really talk about how you started the business, but my dad decided he was going to be a comic dealer about 2.5 years ago. At the time, I was working a full-time job. I had actually just moved up to Washington. I'd only lived here for about 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And he asked I suggested I help him get started because he had how many comics? 5,000 comic books initially.
Yeah,
we were sorting through.
I had 3,000 from my original collection, and then when you came on, I had about 7,000 I had bought.
So I spent a weekend just like organizing comics. And I am a very type A person, so like that's right up my alley. Is organizing. I also have a degree in organizational communication, so I have like some background just around like business as well. Yeah. And I kind of wanted to get out of my career that I was in, so he was like, "Why don't we do this together?" Right.
Wait, so Rachel, was there no interest in comics prior to this?
I was not a comic person at all. I didn't collect comics. I did know about comics because in the early 2000s, when my dad started selling on eBay, I was probably like 4 or 5, and I remember, or I was like 10. I was older than 5. I was like 10. I was born in 91. I was 10. And I remember like learning how to hold a comic book and like how to grade a comic book, and like he'd get them back from CGC and like, sell them on eBay. And so I remember like seeing these comic books as a kid, but it wasn't ever something that I was like super interested in. And so whenever I was introduced to this later on, I was like, oh, I love art and I love cartoons and I love video games. And so I was like, I can find like something that I like out of this. And like doing our YouTube channel, I have a background in tech as well. I was also able to kind of like dive into this world of like vintage comics that I'd never seen before, like with my dad doing the show and tells that we show on our channel. And it gave me a new perspective on like golden age comics and silver age comics and things like that, and bronze age, and like artists that do these covers and like horror comics. And so I definitely have a small collection now that I wasn't intending on having, but it just kind of happened. And there are comics that I'm interested in now. I wouldn't say that I'm an avid collector, but I definitely have a huge appreciation.
Do you remember the first book you got?
The first book that I got?
Yeah, when you started getting comic books.
I was just recently.
Just now, yeah.
I bought
the first one you got that I gave you.
Oh, that you gave me?
Yeah. X-Men 141.
Oh yeah, because
yeah.
Days of Future Past. Yes.
Yeah,
I have an 8.5 sitting in my little collection.
Start them off right.
It was a misfire. There was a defect on that book, and it came back at a lower grade. And I'm like, well, I could sell this. And at the time, it was kind of hot. Or I could give it to Rachel, and that started her stack.
That was which is
getting considerable now.
Yeah, I do have a short box now.
And just up till recently, she had never bought a comic book, which was starting to bother me.
That's right.
Wait, you got to buy something.
So Rachel, real quick, I'm always curious to ask. So you said you left. What was the career you left?
I'd rather not say the company I worked for, but it was a tech company.
Okay.
A large.
It was a large tech company.
A large tech company.
So I got some
like California. Not tech anymore.
Were you in California area, or were you still?
No, I was up here. I was up here in Washington. But I just was ready for a career change. I'd worked in retail for a really long time. And I wanted something different. And I've always wanted to do something with my dad. And this is it's just cool that we were able to do this. And like, it's just kind of turned into a lot of other things that we weren't expecting it to turn into.
I tell you,
are there any brothers or sisters involved?
I was going to ask, is there any more siblings or?
Yes, I have a sister. She's been out of the country for a while, but she's coming back, so she'll probably pop in some videos.
Yeah, she's going to be staying with me for a while, but I would love my dream. What I wanted to do, the reason I do this, is to work exclusively with family. That's awesome. Not that I don't like working with other people. I certainly do. I love it, actually. But at this stage in my life, I really wanted to be closer with my family. And I decided that if I was going to do something, I'd always offer to bring them along, So I come from a pretty successful career doing something completely different.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, that's the reason I chose doing this, is because I want to do it. And I'm crazy. I always end up biting off way more than I can chew, always looking back, wondering like, boy, if you told me what it would take to do that, and I knew, I would never have done that, but that's the way my whole career has been. So
you were saying that you had breaks before in collecting, right? So you got back into it in the 2000s. Is that when you left the other career?
Yeah. So no. It was my other career that hadn't kind of stopped doing comics. And at that point, when I stopped selling, which was 2003, I stopped collecting, and I had a collection that I was carrying around with me. And we moved all over the country at the time. And I just kept moving, these 13, 14 long boxes, which, by the way, we hate long boxes. If I could never see a long box, we use all short boxes.
Easy to move around.
Break my back every day.
They're slumping around, and it's like, anyway. I carried these books around for years, and I was out of the hobby for 20 years.
Huh.
You were out of the hobby, JP, right? Didn't you say you were out of the hobby for a long time?
Both of us are 30 plus years.
Yeah, I was in the 90s.
Look old enough to be out for 30 years.
Yeah, we're just mid 40s. So I'm older than Rohan by a couple years.
Okay.
Yeah. It was just this past May that I'm 1 year back into collecting it. I just turned 40 in March, and I hadn't collected since I was a child, like 8, 9 years old. So yeah, it's been 30 plus years for me.
And I was in till high school, and then I remember the Superman 75, Death of Superman, the Spawn, the whole Image thing happening, and then high school became more interesting than comics. I still like to draw, but the girls weren't into comic book nerds, so I just figured I'd find something else to deal with, sports and things like that. And then I had kids, got married, had kids, and then the bug bit me again. It wasn't because of COVID. It was at the end of COVID. I just went into.
So what did you guys do during COVID when everyone else was spending every last cent they got a hold of to buy a comic book?
I was spending all my money on like kitchens and stuff like that.
I watched the entire Sopranos because I'd never seen it before. That was my big accomplishment during COVID.
Really good use of your time.
Hey, look, even if you had watched it, it was probably a really good time to watch it again.
Oh, it was great. Oh, yeah.
I never saw Game of Thrones. I saw it during COVID. Like all 8 seasons, all 100 episodes. Loved it.
Commitment.
All 8,000 characters. Yeah.
Oh my God, I binged it like till almost 24 hours straight. We watched that, my wife and I. It's a great show. So
it's funny about that show. The first time I watched it, I think I was 2 or 3 seasons in until I realized, no, you got to remember this stuff. You're going to get really confused.
I tried to read the book when I was younger, and I read the first chapter, and I said no.
I have
many names.
I have read everything written on page about those stories 3 times over.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I am obsessed with it.
I tell you what, in college, I had friends who were Tolkien fans, Hobbit fans. When Lord of the Rings came out, I watched it and fell asleep 3 times. I could not get through that movie to save my life. So when Game of Thrones came out, I said, I'm not into the castles and the swords and whatever. And I didn't watch it until COVID, and I love it. I mean, I could go back and watch it again. It's
well,
awesome.
that's just so similarly. So I have a buddy, and he's into kind of the whole fantasy genre. And so season 1 came out, and he's like, "You got to watch the show." I was like, "Okay." So I watched it. I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." He's like, "You got to read these books. It's my favorite book series." And I'm like, "I'm not into that fantasy stuff. Like, I'll just watch the show." He bought the book for me, put it on my Kindle, and so I was like, "Okay, I'll read it." And like from right out the gate, and now I've read 10 times as much as he has into this stuff. So
you're gonna hate this. The only episode of Game of Thrones I ever watched was the season finale.
Oh, really? That's the worst one.
Was with you guys here.
Oh.
That's the only time never seen another episode of it.
So back to the break I took. In that break, I was very involved in my career, and art has never been far from me. So I'm obsessed with all forms of art: music, cinema, painting, you name it. I love art. You know, and when I went to college, I took as many art electives, not to get out of it, but to actually learn about art, you know, as I possibly could. Art and history are the things I've always been obsessed with. You know, to this day, I spend a lot of my time in my reading on history. You know, so I like stories. You know, which is kind of a natural way to really love comic books, because some of the stories I read as a kid, the origin of Superman, for instance, it stuck with me. It blew my mind. The origin of Spider-Man, one of the best origin stories ever. So I really like stories that reminded me of Greek mythology, you know, so, which I read as well, you know, and I read things like White Fang. I was reading all these books when I was a kid, and it kind of ties into what I like about comic books. In a much more condensed version of telling a story with words, but the visual application of getting to see, you know, what's happening. You read a book and there's no pictures to go along with it. I was just telling Rachel, I was obsessed with Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan when I was a kid. Read tons of those books. And I also read all of the DC Tarzans, which I have a full set of that are absolutely pristine, look like they were printed yesterday. And it's funny, I told my brother I got those. He goes, I don't think that those are really hot. I'm like, who said anything about selling them? I'm not selling these ever.
The last show was that there was a guy going table to table looking for Tarzan. I mean, he was like, that's all he wanted. So, hey, there's somebody else like you out there too.
You got him.
Well, there are others. He would weep if he saw the copies that I had. I'm just because they're uncirculated and they're from a guy that I bought comics from in the 80s. So I know the provenance of these books all the way to who bought them. I know every person that's owned, you know what I mean? I know every person that's owned them, and now I own them, and I can't imagine cracking one out to sell it. It just seems like, I don't know, travesty.
Yeah.
But it was actually my brother. He had lost his wife a little over 4 years ago, and I went and spent a lot of time with him. And my brother has never stopped collecting, and we're close. But in the time I spent with him, it kind of reignited some of my comic book stuff. And then we talk every day. And obviously, if I'm talking to my brother every day, we're talking about comics at some point. And I don't know if you know how this feels, but at one point I was kind of okey doke in the conversations, like, yeah, I kind of know about that. And after a while, it was like, no, tell me more. Oh, let me send you a picture of this book or that book, or, you know, oh, I'm buying this and I'm buying that. And then coupled with the Miles Morales movie that came out. And then after the Miles Morales movie, it was Disney Plus with WandaVision and all that stuff. That fired me up. And I just dove back in. So that 20-year hiatus I took was over with a vengeance after all that.
Yeah, that's the way with Rohan and I. I mean, I my kids are teenagers now, 18 down to 12 or 13 now. And I watched all the movies with them. I have 2 boys, 2 girls. They have all the toys, or they had a bunch of toys, and I never got back into collecting until the end of COVID. We got our shots. We were able to go back out in the world again, and I went to a comic store because it was the only thing open that night.
Oh, wow.
And I was just awed again, like, wow, I forgot how cool this stuff was. And then by that March of 2022, I was back in it, like you said, with a vengeance. I mean, buying stuff on Elite and things like that. So
what were you focused on when you first came back? Getting stuff you used to have, or trying to see what's up?
I had sold. I was a big McFarlane guy, still am. So I sold my Spider-Man 298 to 300 to a guy that had a gaming store.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a whole lot of money for it. Then I was like, this stuff's not worth much anymore. I'll just get rid of it, Sold a couple of them. And then when I got back into it in March and realized how much they were worth again, I said, I got to get them back. So I went back to the same guy to buy it back, and he had sold it to somebody else. And he sold me a different copy, a raw copy. And from there, I just had to get a better copy of that one. So I had to get back all my original comics I sold or traded. And those were a lot of McFarlane. But I still had a short box full of my comics from when I was a kid. But just those three, like your Tarzan books, I don't know why the hell I gave them up or sold them. It just, I don't know what I was thinking. It's just a dumb moment. So I had to get those back. And now they're on my wall again. They're not the same ones, but they're those books. And then I got it sucked into the Elite claim sales, which you guys do now, which is awesome.
We do.
So I could watch a claim sale all night long, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm watching a claim sale." It's captivating.
I'm sure that goes over fantastic.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I mean, it's just like it got me back into it, with a vengeance, like you said. So I think now I've gotten back most of what I wanted, or bought most of what I wanted. So now it's just what happened, because I don't have a comic book store near me except that gamer store I was talking about. I go to antique stores and I look for stuff like oddball stuff you're talking about, or the hot book that was just on Lords of the Long Box or on Comic Tom, and I look through the antique store and I'll find them, and then I'll flip those books to get some cash to buy the ones I really want, right? So I don't try to flip them I flip them to make money, just because I'm not necessarily going to find a Batman 227 in the antique store. You might.
Not a nice one.
Yeah, but I might find a bone number 2, if you know Bone from Jeff Smith. Sure. Found that in an antique store, sold that, and then I bought something else with it.
So you let the hobby pay for itself, is what you're doing. Yeah.
Yep.
That's tough, but everyone should do that, don't you think? I mean, or else you're talking about a black hole that can be very sizable.
Oh my gosh.
Only spending.
You're talking about long boxes, 7,000 books you guys have.
And you're talking about a lot of single men.
The way
all of us would be single. Yes.
So I mean, you got to make it pay for itself, and that's the thing. But I almost get I need a fix every so often to go to a antique store or another store to go through long boxes and find something.
Right.
Just something cool that you saw on the show, something rare, whatever it may be, something with margin. You buy it for $2 and it's worth 20. I like that.
So do you find that you don't feel that you can get those same kind of deals online?
You can, but I don't like waiting to get the books shipped to me, which I still do. I still buy from eBay.
Okay.
But I travel for work, and when I have downtime, I'll go to antique stores looking, because I don't have a local comic shop. So it's kind of my way of just finding the books. But I've noticed you can find things and make some money to buy the books you want. Like Rohan and I both wanted Hulk 181. It's one we never bought as a kid. It was too much back then, $300. Now it's thousands, and so we're trying
like the same amount though. $200 is a lot of money when you don't have it.
Exactly. I'm like, why didn't we buy it back then? It's like, well, $300 is a lot of money for a 12-year-old, right? So but so that's what I was trying to do, is just find. I thought for sure I was going to find 129 for Amazing Spider-Man, 181 at a garage sale. I figured it's going to happen, right? Someone's going to have it. I'm going to get it for $2. I know I'm going to. Never happened, right? Yet. Yeah. My fingers. So then I went to antique stores, and then elite sales and all this and that. So it changed over time. I got more realistic. But that was my focus, was to. I see these people on Mint Hunter. He found stuff in antique stores and garage sales. I'm like, that's my thing. Nothing found.
Yeah, but I mean, with Mint Hunter, he's so obsessed with it. He doesn't skip anything. and it's like it's really a life commitment. I mean, he's talking about what time he gets there. It's great to watch that. You know, and that is interesting. What about you, Rohan? Are you buying books again and doing all that?
Yeah. So like what actually got me back into it is like kind of during that whole like crypto hype, my brother, he came to me with this like VV app and he's like, oh, look, they have NFTs of comic books. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It kind of took me back. And I was like, how much is that? And he's like, oh, it will sell for, I think it's $6. And I was like, I'll buy some of those. And so then I kind of got into that. And then I was like, and then that got me to go to a comic shop, just like similar to JP. And I was like, this is way cooler than having it looking out on my phone. So that's how it started. So you were asking about like what we were into when we first started. So a year ago, I kind of wanted everything, right? It's like I wanted the old Silver Age stuff, but then I also had to get the new stuff to kind of get the hot stuff. And then like maybe I can mix it. And so it's like I spread myself too thin. Plus I was in this thing where it's like I wanted to get books like every week, and so it's like I couldn't buy big books, so I'd buy like $5 books and $10 books. And then like as I kind of like further got into about 6 months in, I was like, okay, I've spent a lot of money. I don't necessarily like have too much vested into each of these like smaller books. And then so from there, I kind of really honed into what I wanted. And so now, so I was able actually to use all that I sold. I traded it all away. And
everything
with that,
you bought the first 6 months you traded out.
Yeah.
Most of it.
I've like reformed my collection. And so now I went from like 200 comics that I bought in like the first 6 months, and I'm down to about, I think I have 30.
Okay.
So I like, well, I'm a big Marvel guy, but I do like Batman and Superman. Yeah. But for me, it's all kind of like, I like big keys. And so now I'm in a frame of mind where it's like, I probably only get 2 or 3 like big books that I keep a year.
Okay.
Because, and like, so yeah, but like, yeah, I have to, work up for them. So like, whether that's trading or, selling or whatnot of what I have to go up.
All slabs? Do you only buy slabs?
So for me, I honestly like don't have too much care of which it is. Like for me, it's just like, what am I going to find the better value deal on? So my Hulk 181 is slabbed. My ASM 129 is slabbed, but then my favorite character is Silver Surfer. My Fantastic 448 is raw. My Silver Surfer 1 is raw. It just worked out that the deal I found that made a lot of sense was raw, and so I have them raw. Like, and to me, that's totally fine. I think in my head, eventually I'll grade them, but then I also think too, sometimes I'm just like, the money I would take to grade them could fund something else. And so we'll see if I get there.
Well, you're putting together some nice books there for 30 books. You just mentioned a few pretty nice books.
Yeah. So like my next one, as I've mentioned, is my goal is X-Men 1.
Okay.
So it's gonna take some time to kind of build up to be able to get that. In the meantime, I will say too, again, my favorite character is Silver Surfer. So I've started collecting some Silver Surfer Marvel cards. And those are fun because like those, like you can get, fairly cheap. I mean, there obviously are some super expensive ones, but like you can win some like auctions on those pretty low. And so that kind of satiates me a little bit while I kind of work towards the big book. Yeah.
So JP, you're an instant gratification guy. If you're buying a comic book, you want it in your hand right then.
Yep. I prefer that. I mean, I bought plenty on eBay, and I do some online auctions, so I have to wait for them to come in. But I like to go to the store and flip through. Like I have a stack probably this high from this last weekend of antique stores and
that's awesome.
Antique stores and gamer stores and stuff like that. I probably bought, and I got an online auction in. So weird stuff. Some of it weird, some of it just off, your regular Marvel stuff. A couple like Web of Spider-Man, but like Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
You ever heard of Sailor Moon? I found issue 35.
Oh, that's cool.
The last one for $2.
When was that published?
2000.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's an older book. Yeah.
This is awesome. Issue 35. It's the last one. It's a newsstand. Pretty high grade.
Who's the publisher on that?
This is Chicks Comics.
Oh, never heard of that. That's cool.
And then I've
never even seen that book before. Yeah, that's cool.
It's the first comic that came out for Sailor Moon. There's one of them that's somewhat expensive, but then there's a San Diego Comic-Con version that's all pink. That's really like a couple $100.
Okay.
So this is like an off the wall. Not everybody collected it, but I knew the name from watching YouTube, podcasts, whatever,
Sure.
and picked up on it and said, "Oh, I need to grab that. $2." I don't know if I'll sell it for much, but I know it's not something you see every day.
Yeah,
I would probably buy that. I like stuff like that.
Now I'll show you one more that I thought was interesting that you may have seen before.
Rachel, I was getting that. Why you just started collecting? What are you collecting?
So the last convention we went to, I bought the limited series of Labyrinth with David Bowie.
Pretty cool.
Okay.
Which I love. And then I'm really into like cartoon comics from my childhood. So like my dad got me a SpongeBob one from like 2002 or something.
I bought 2 of them. I found 2 really nice copies. I was just going to buy her one. I'm like, well, I want one.
And I got some like Steven Universe comics from a friend, and I have some like Adventure Time comics. And then I have I really like indie comics. Like you gave me a Mullet Man #1. I really like that. I think that was Scout Comics that made that one. So I'm really into like indie comics that have really cool art, and then also like comics from my childhood. So those are the ones that I typically tend to buy if I see them.
I just gave you a copy. What did I give you?
You gave me Beauty and the Beast #1.
Yeah, I bought Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and all those when they came out in the 90s. Mm-hmm. I still had them. So now that Little Mermaid's actually for the first time, it's worth something.
Yeah. Isn't that Scooby-Doo book worth pretty good too?
That's from the 70s though.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, the Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. So yes, all Scooby-Doos from the very first run, because then it was like the Adventures of Scooby-Doo. It changed the title. All of those are Addams Family, Scooby-Doo.
I would buy that.
Addams Family. That's right. Yeah.
They're and Star Trek. I mean, even the picture Star Trek's the first 10 issues. Those books, those obscure books in grade are worth money, and they're hard to find. I mean, you're just not going to find them. So, I gave her like a Disney book that I've been holding on to for years, but they're actually worth something now. And then I found I didn't know this came out in 2015. Was it Marvel who did it? The Tiki Room. I found 2 copies of a comic book called The Tiki Room. Disneyland, they have the Tiki Room. I love stuff like that. And by the way, I think from an investment perspective, a lot of those things, kind of like you're saying, they may not cost a lot. I look at condition, and I can press and clean a book to help it along if it needs it. I like stuff like that because of exactly what we're talking about. There's a sentimental value to books that some people, that's the only thing that drives them in collecting is like.
That's probably me. That's probably the way I collect then.
Well, not only that, something I've kind of really come to realize is that I find that the research, the hunting, the digging is what I love the most about it. And then like once I get it, I at the moment don't have like a comic room like JP has, but I hope to one day and be able to display them all. But like I honestly just love like researching and learning. Okay, I got this is what I'm going to go after. How I'm going to get it. Almost more so than having it. And so like we've talked about before, like if I was super rich and I could just go buy every book I want, that would not be nearly as enjoyable than it is to like work up to something, find it, get it.
People like that, and I've met some along the way, is they find a way to make it enjoyable.
I know. I was going to say
that.
I'm
sure after impossible things.
That's
you
true.
know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very true. Very
impossible task.
Something that only pops up every once in a while.
Then it's one guy fighting against one guy, and that's how you get a $250,000 Marvel Spotlight #5.
Yeah.
It's not because it's worth $250,000. Nothing against Ghost Rider, who's awesome. So is Plug Art, great, but come on, that was 2 people who had too much money that fought. They're really fighting with money now. And whoever wins with money gets a comic book.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Now, is this something you've seen before?
Yes.
Scud
That's
number
cool.
9. Oh, it's got the
I'm having a hard time seeing
action figure cover. That's cool.
That's the first action figure cover.
I've seen a picture of it. I've never seen that book. That's cool.
I found this at an antique store in Philadelphia over the weekend. It was in bad grade. I can press books, not as good as you can, but I pressed it to look better. But it's one of those ones I saw on a show and thought, I've seen that before. Looked it up.
I think that's how I saw it, was on a show, maybe the same one you watched.
Yep.
That's cool. No, I can see the antique store. I would be doing that if I was traveling as well. I keep thinking about doing it and never have time. I'm so busy all the time to just go and I did a crawl 2 weeks ago and went to a few stores and picked up. I did really well. It's so funny. And I'm talking about finding jewels in a pile of junk. It's like I went into a store, had 25,000, 30,000 books out. Everything had been rifled through, just it didn't look good. It was tired. All the comic books looked really tired. But if you have enough energy and enough knowledge, I found some really good books. I found Destroyer Duck #1, the first appearance of Gru the Wanderer, and it's a 9.8 candidate. I found
you find a 9.8 candidate in a long box I don't know if I have any 9.8 in all my collection. I have no Mark Jewelers. I have no 9.8 that I think of. So it's great. Like I don't even think they exist. I think they have to be pressed or something to get there. Or magic to get that stuff.
I have to tell you though, 9.8s are overrated. I think it's an ego thing, right? It's like you can't beat me. I got a 9.8.
Yep.
Unless you have a 9.9,
or a 10.0,
But at the end of the day, really, for me, a comic book starts to be incredibly collectible and exciting to me at 9.4, depending on the era. A brand new book that came out last year, it kind of needs to be a 9.8 because the paper's so thin, it shows up. But if you have bindery tears and some of the things that stops a book from being 9.8 and you have a 9.6, okay, 9.6 is a really nice comic book. It's got no color breaks on it. I mean, and 9.6 is what I really shoot after. That's almost impossible from the 70s.
Yeah.
Finding anything over an 8.0 from the 70s, very tough, right? But I think that what I really like is to look at a comic book that looks like the day it was printed, whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
No wear, no color breaks. I enjoy that. It's a hobby all by itself, is like looking for those grades. But 9.8 per se, it's like you think in your mind that it'll be a better investment because it's more rare. And that may be the case, but it's not the case with Hulk 181. And it's not the case with ASM 300, because there are so many that every single grade is its own lane.
Yeah.
It has its own pulse. And if you bought a 9.6 5 years ago and you still have it, it's worth more.
And is it a newsstand or is it a direct? Because that's another lane.
Yeah.
No, that's one question that we don't. I don't want to. We don't have to ask a bunch of questions to you, but you would know better. The direct versions of in the 70s, aren't there less of those because there were less comic book stands than newsstands? So wouldn't
that is correct, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
there's no premium on those books. Like even I saw someone selling something on eBay that was a newsstand from the 70s or mid 70s, and like that's not rare because it's newsstand. It would be direct would be more rare.
I think a lot of times nowadays they're like playing into that just because newsstand is so like such a hot word that if they can say it just like, for example, was it Heritage that just sold that Nintendo Power #1 9.8 for $120,000, and in the title it says Nintendo Power Newsstand. I'm talking to Manu and Manu goes, every Nintendo Power is a newsstand. There's no differentiation. But people that don't know about it don't know it. So newsstand right now is just such a hot buzzword in comics that if it is a newsstand and you can say it, people are going to put it on there.
We literally talk about this all the time because there's certain books where that's a good thing, and there's certain books where it's like that doesn't matter.
Collectors drive the market, right? So it's interesting. When I was buying comic books and I had a pool box in the 80s, for instance, right? When I had a pool box, I was out buying comic books in the wild somewhere at a convention or somewhere else. If it was a newsstand, I would pass on it. I think, and I still think, I thought then, and I still think that a picture of Spidey is much better looking than the UPC code.
Yeah.
But the rarity, I think people are always looking for that nuance of rarity, right? So when does newsstand make a difference? Well, certainly not till after 1985. But if you have a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 252, you will find, and that came out right in that era that was, I call it the 50-50 era. There was as many newsstands as there was not. If you have a newsstand of that book, it's worth 20% more all day long.
Yeah, I have probably even more than 20%.
Well, it's around 20. I sold there's a few books with 60-cent price tags from Marvel that newsstands are worth more, and it is what it is. So if collectors are willing to spend more on it, the question you have to ask yourself if you're a collector is, am I willing to spend more on it just because it's a newsstand?
Yeah.
The direct seems like a bowl of wet soup. It's like, who wants a direct? It's only worth half.
Well, I mean, and then like it gets crazy, right? Like you take ASM 300 and a 9.8 direct is regularly sold for around 3,600 to 4,000. And the newsstand goes for 18,000. It's just like, that to me is like absurd.
And Mark Jewelers too. My brother, I was chatting with my brother today, and he probably has 175 Mark Jewelers that he bought new because he was in the Air Force, right? So he's in the military, he's buying them. They all have Mark Jeweler inserts because that's what they did, right?
That's where they came from.
And he's like, it's so funny. They used to really interrupt my comic reading because the cardboard would get in the way of the way he likes to read, which is with the book open and flipping pages. Well, if the cardboard's sticking straight up, you can't do that. He goes, I used to want to rip it out all the time. And he goes, I'm glad I didn't, because he's not selling any of those because they're in runs. And I don't know if you guys are, but my brother is certainly a completist. If he buys one issue, he's going after the entire run.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy though with the Mark Jewelers. So like when JP and I had gotten my Hulk 181. And so now we were searching for JP. And so a guy that I do a lot of my trades with, he ended up getting two. And it was like, I think he had one was like a 2.0 and one I think was like a 4.0, I think it was. But the 2.0 was a Mark Jewelers. And so the 2.0, he actually was selling, I think maybe even a little bit higher than the higher grade one.
Sure.
And he sold that one before he sold the higher grade one. And I was just like, I would rather have the better looking one. And if it's cheaper too, like to me, like, again, I don't personally care about newsstands or Mark. To me, it's just, again, it's kind of like the slab versus raw. If the deal I find that looks good is a newsstand, so be it. If it's not a huge importance.
Yeah.
Just people that want that rarity. Man.
Yeah.
People just search for that rarity. Because we just had that Captain Marvel. It was a double cover and a Mark Jeweler.
And a Mark Jeweler, yeah.
I saw that. I couldn't believe
like
that.
a dime a dozen. You never see anything like that.
Yeah.
I sold that book. It was what did I say it was? What grade? 9.2?
It was a 9.2 inner cover, 8.5 outer cover.
It might have been a 9.4 inner cover and an 8.5 outer cover. And that the way you grade is double cover is by the
higher grade. Yeah.
So
that's crazy that they allow that because that's going to be the better cover on the two. So to give you that choices or give you that way, I'm like, wow.
Not to mention if like
the answers to the test.
Not to mention like if the outer cover is way lower grade and then you have this in a slab and you're like, this doesn't look like a 9.
Yeah. Well, check out this 9.6. That looks like a 7.0.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't get that.
Interestingly, I sold that book for more than a 9.8 goes for.
Holy crap.
Crazy.
You know? And somebody had just recently asked me, like, how much more is a Mark Jewelers or a double cover? And the answer is, I don't know. I mean,
whatever someone wants to pay for
it. Really, there's so many variables. Like, is it a key or is it not a key? Mm-hmm. Is it a popular series or is it not a popular series? Is it a good artist? Right. So on and on and on. And I go through thousands of books constantly. I'm going through books all day today. I don't know why, but the first thing I do is look for a double cover. And the second thing I do is look for Mark Jewelers if there's a newsstand. And it's like, how many times have I found that? Oh, please. I can count them on two hands, maybe. If I didn't know I was already buying it, Very, very seldom I've never found a double cover in the wild. I just came up with this one. I only forgot. That doesn't count. Because when I opened it up and it was a double cover, I got surprised. But that wasn't because I just found it. It's because I forgot. That's what happens, you guys, when you get old.
You get 7,000 books. I look at all mine now because I was specific on newsstands for the last probably 6 months.
Yeah.
And in the wild looking for newsstands, especially books from the 90s, because I know they're rarer if they're in good condition. And I don't know when Mark Jewelers stopped putting the inserts in the magazine, in the comics? 80s. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I look back at the ones from the 80s that are newsstand, and I don't have one Mark Jewellers, not one.
That's not rare. I mean, that really is not uncommon. And I had do you remember Robin, this series, the very first Robin series?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it had a Neil Adams poster inside it.
Yep.
I found one in this old box of Beater comics that I've been carrying around forever, right? As a matter of fact, I got a copy of Casper over there that was in the same box I've been reading to my grandson. It's been on this table over here for 4 years, right? And it's a nice copy. It's so funny. You can beat up some comics and they never seem to look like it. And then some comics, you just barely touch them.
And they look
and all
terrible.
of a sudden you ruin it. But I forgot what I was saying.
The double covers and the new Mark Jewellers.
Oh, no. I got completely sidetracked talking about.
Well, it was the Robin one.
I found the Robin one. It was probably a 2.5. It was torn. It was jacked up, but it was a Mark Jewellers, right? And I pulled the poster out. This is in the last 2 years. I pulled the poster out so I could hang it up, and then lost the poster. So I still haven't seen that poster. So I had this, and now today that same one, I would sell it and probably make money on it because that's just a weird, obscure, and it's very late Mark Jewellers, probably 87 or 88 when that book came out. So yeah.
That's the one that has Robin and Batman on the cover.
It just has Robin. It was a first series of just solo Robin.
Okay.
And then they did Robin 2 that had all the hologram cards on it that came out in the 90s. Remember
those are the ones I remember, yeah.
I only have 100 copies. If you guys want one, I'll give you one.
Yeah.
I talk about a book all the time nobody wants.
There is a Robin, the one with the red cover. It has Robin,
that's the one.
And then Batman's behind him.
Well, then you're right, and I just don't remember.
I was like, all I can see is Robin's head.
Like I said, I don't even know where I put the poster, so it doesn't surprise me. I don't remember that.
I look for that book all the time because there is a version of that's newsstand that has the Robin. It says something in bubbles on the right-hand side, and that one's like
it doesn't say
scarce.
It doesn't say poster on it.
Yeah, something like that.
There's like 3 nuances. Yeah,
yep.
So that's second. You're talking about the second print. And the second print's profoundly different, and only 5% of what they printed was on the second print of that book. I know exactly. I thought I bought one, and somebody CGC had mislabeled one, and I returned it to the guy because he said he had a copy of it, and I ended up spending like $400 on this book that literally is worth like, I don't know, $30 or $40.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's a daughter.
I need one of mine to show up, so I'm not left out in the.
Yeah.
Hey.
So I got 2. I got twins. There's 2 right here.
So
Dave, Rachel, how do you guys? So since we're talking about finding all these books, how do you guys find like your inventory that you sell? Like, what's your process?
Boy, it's a huge process, and it has a lot, no different than going to antique stores. So there's a lot of places that I can buy books. A lot of it has to do with experience. So if I'm just buying one book, it's because I'm looking for books that I feel I want to invest in. And I found some really good deals just by knowing what I'm looking for. Other things like on a CGC board or people I've met along the way. I've got a guy that I buy. I've got multiple people I buy comics from that have huge back stocks, and people are more motivated to sell you comics for a good price than to spend a lot of money with them, especially on a regular basis. So,
do you buy collections? Did you buy?
I do.
Okay.
I absolutely buy collections, but it's been tough for us because we're so focused on getting the YouTube channel up and running. We have an eBay store. We don't have a brick and mortar. But I'm starting to have people that know us now that are starting to talk about collections. Today I had 3 different times that somebody had sent me something, or they want to sell a collection. I'm a little bit picky about what I buy, but I'm also pretty generous about what I spend. So I do not mind spending more than someone else would if they're the books I want, which to me they have the most high grade examples of those books. So I'm not necessarily looking for one key really cheap. I'd rather have a lot of books that are in pretty good shape, that maybe I can improve some of them, because my whole goal is to sell really high grade books. So I'll pass on books because of condition, regardless. I mean, they'd have to practically probably give them to me if the condition's low. Because I can't.
Is not low grade is better than no grade for Dave, right? That's not
absolutely. But the books that I sell and our overhead requires me to really have some nice stuff that people are willing to spend more than $2 or $3 on. So if I was just selling books that I bought, I'm not a 50-cent guy. I'm not a $100 long box guy. Not that I don't want to be. I'd love to find a box like that, but I'm also the guy that might give you more because I'm.
Yeah, and so a question I always ask when we have people that sell is, so you guys do claim sales, and I was on Instagram yesterday, for example, at like 7:00, and there was probably 12 live sales going on at that one time. And so I always ask, like, how do you guys compete in that? And I guess the answer is like, you've curated your audience that you have what you like to sell, and your audience goes to you for that. And that's how you differentiate amongst the other 11, for instance.
Yeah. So I was in the casino industry for a long time. And one of the things I learned in the industry is that all the hotels on the Las Vegas Strip might be vastly different than each one, but they're never competing with their neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if you took Caesar's Palace, they're not competing with the Flamingo. They're competing with Wynn, who just in this case happens to be their neighbor, but it really has to do with marketing, customer base, demographics, who goes to that. So Rachel and I focus on bronze and copper high grade. We're hyper focused on it. So do we have Silver Age stuff? Every sale we do. I collect some Silver Age stuff, but I'm most excited about Bronze Age. And
we have modern stuff every sale too.
Yeah.
So we definitely cater to everyone, but we really focus on the bronze and copper books.
Right. We don't keep up. Like I didn't buy any pictures. I didn't buy any copies of the new Spider Boy.
Come on now.
No, not because I don't want to.
Oh, but yeah.
But because I got on the bus late. So would I have wanted that in my pool box? I'd have wanted 5. But I'm not spending $100 on one. Not now. So do I like it? Yeah, I have. I bought about 5,000 books in 2021, all new. We have box after box of new book from 2021. I loved what was going on. From a financial investment perspective, maybe not the best place to invest money. So I'm really looking, for much older books. I really, I just bought, I don't know, in the last month, I probably bought 600 or 700 Bronze Age books. They're all high grade. Going to different people that I've met, it really is about who you meet, what kind of relationship you can for me, what kind of relationship I can foster, and that we both have to have something that's attractive to the other person.
Yeah.
So they have books that I want, I have money that they want, and we do a trade. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think with our YouTube channel, we've been able to create a community that is learning along with us about the different kind of books that we want to create and have and sell.
We're selling through at our sales. Mm-hmm. I cannot put enough books together. I mean, so
that's awesome.
Last night we did one and we had over 70 people consistently. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like
you have yours every Monday, right?
Yeah, Mondays 5 to 7 p.m.
I feel like 70 is great. I mean, we talked to Dave from West Coast Avengers, and he does great. Now I think he says his is like around 40, and he's moving, and so 70 is incredible. So in your 5 to 7, how many books are we selling?
What we sell, 150 last night?
We had about 200 that we showed. I was like 190, and we sold 150.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we do giveaways too. We gave away probably 8 books.
Yeah. Yeah, if I had more, we could sell more. We have 4 people working the show. We're buried now. I mean, all of a sudden, I'll put up
50 books.
Yeah.
Logistically, that's crazy.
So this month, in the past 4 weeks, we've probably sold that many every week. So we sold about 600 books this month. and they're not cheap. I mean, some of these are, you know, we had multiple copies of New Mutants 98, for instance. I had multiple copies of the first Scott Lang Ant-Man. I sold 2 or 3 in the past month, all high grade. So everything is either a 9.0 to 9.6. We've had some near mint mints that we sell. We're able to sell near mint mints raw. People are buying them and loving them. So yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm working, you know, constantly, 7 days a week, but that's kind of what I expected. And we're also focused. So our sales are really focused. People kind of know there's always going to be horror books. People know that there's always going to be Bronze Age. I'm always going to have like some, I'm always going to have some picture frame books every single time. I was looking at some books today. I've got some 9.0s and 9.2s that are all 20-cent picture frame Marvels. So we have such a mix of things like that. I'm not hyper focused on the big keys. I'm not hyper focused on the best flavor of the month. You know, I'm not trying to. I sold that Supergirl #6, I think it was, that blew up. I sold that for like $30 or $40. The one that they're fashioning all the DC stuff off of.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those kind of things don't mean a lot to me, especially if I paid cover price. So I think a lot of people can save money on things like that. A lot of people can save money on things like that. But really, it's about people who really do like high grade, and sometimes just like getting a deal, you know, because sometimes we will blow things out.
So the other question I like to ask with this is, so you have a 2-hour sale. How much time is spent before prepping for the 2-hour sale, and how much time is spent after invoicing, packaging, shipping, all that?
That's our whole life.
That's literally all we're doing.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. We've done 11 now.
Yeah.
And we haven't stopped. Like, that's all we do is work on the clean sale. I underestimated initially going into it how much work it would be. And you work a lot harder than I do. But invoicing takes about 2 hours. I've spent all day today packing, and I'll spend all day tomorrow packing and shipping and communicating with people and making sure things are paid for. And like, it takes days.
Well, I also imagine, Dave, you know, if you pride yourself on grading the books yourself and standing behind your grades, that in itself for 190 books that you're putting on display has got to take, I don't even know.
I don't grade them myself, though. I mean, what I do is I'll grade them and then give them to Rachel, who's really, I mean, she's tough.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go.
and you know, she had never graded a comic book 2 years ago. You wouldn't know that now.
Yeah.
And what happened was she wasn't doing that at all the first 3 or 4 months that we worked together. I was having her do other things, and I was too far behind, and I needed to grade books I was buying. So we grade a book 4 or 5 times. Every single book that comes into our hands gets graded. And I'm talking about, I go through every page. Wow. I'm looking at staples. But I gave Rachel the Overstreet price, the Overstreet grading guide, and said, if you don't mind, I'd like you to grade. And she goes, well, how do you do it? And I'm like, I can't explain it to you, but read this. And man, she's gotten really good. And what it is I now need to wear things. I need these bad. And sometimes I don't use them. And the other day I gave her something, and I thought it was a near mint. She looked at it and goes, it has a very slight blunted corner. She goes, well, there's a blunted corner here. There's a spine tip here. I went and got my glass on. I'm like, well, there sure is. So that's kind of our system, is that we both grade, especially books that we put in super high grade. Like, I don't need a lot of help with a low grade book. If you can see it like that far away, then I don't need any help.
Right.
But not that I can't see those things, but I'm already spending so much time. So we spend most of our time grading books or sending books. And the sales that we do are a major cherry pick, because I have a lot of books, but I'm not just saying, okay, I'm going to sell this box. That's not the way it works. I really do curate that. All right, what is it this week that we can get people excited about and we can sell through? Sometimes we'll put in books that maybe, you know, they're just back issues. We've done really well with back issues, especially 9.6 back issues from the 70s and 80s. People go nuts over those things. They'll pay money for them. And as you know, from looking at stores, try to find a raw 9.6 from them.
Yeah.
just because of being in a bag, being handled, somebody bought it and they put it in their car, and you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's going to get a little wrinkled, and it's probably going to be a 9.2. I mean, that's like the average grade of a book that's been getting, you know, and once it starts getting looked through at a convention,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why I don't believe. I know there's 9.8s out there, and I just think you have to buy it directly from the store, and don't put gloves on, put it in a bag, and then send it off to CGC, and it gets a 9.8.
Even then, we haven't gotten 9.8s.
Yeah, Diamond distributors weren't exactly handling those things with kid gloves either.
Yeah.
So
well, that's why I'm always like, I don't understand. Like, for example, there is a Captain America 1 that is a 9.8. And I'm like, how is this book from 1941?
Is it a file copy?
I don't know. Or right now on Comic Connect, there is a Iron Man 1, so 1968, that is a 9.9.
Yeah.
9.9?
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
It wasn't read, and it was kept in one spot. I mean,
in the dark.
But you guys know what I'm talking about. Sometimes a comic book seems like it can take a licking and keep on ticking, and other times you barely pick it up and it starts to wrinkle.
Yeah.
Well, I sent in one of my favorite characters was the Punisher, and I had Punisher #1, but not the miniseries, which I was never allowed to buy as a kid because it was too violent. So I didn't have the first miniseries.
The Mike Zeck.
No, I have it now, but that's the one I wanted. I have the one with the bazooka on the cover, right?
Right.
Read
the
that
long-running series.
Yeah. I read that, and I had Hulk 340. Read both of those. Well, Rohan, I don't read books. I like the artwork. That's what I buy them for.
Okay.
I sent them both into CGC. The Hulk came back a 9.2, which I was happy with. The Punisher came back an 8.0. They were both probably handled the same. I expected them both to be very similar in grade because they were handled. They weren't just stacked away. They were read or looked through pretty well. But I was surprised the Hulk, because it's a blue cover. You can probably see spine ticks on it. Came back higher than that Punisher book. So I just don't get it. So it's hard to really get a handle on what CGC is going to do, trying to get a 9.8. Like, I don't think I have any 9.8s that I didn't buy as a 9.8, right? I don't think I could press. I mean, maybe like Spawn, the Batman Spawn that came out.
I'm going to send you a raw 9.8.
Look at that.
I'm going to send you one. Let's break that. It'll be old. It'll be more than 25 years old.
And it's
I don't know what yet, but I'll send you one.
I see that. That boggles my mind that something that old could be a 9.8, and something brand new. I think this Batman Spawn might be a 9.8. I don't, because I touched it like this as I left the store. I barely handled it to keep it high grade. If it is that, I don't know.
It's so weird. Like, CGC grades those books differently. They grade modern books differently than they do older books, which we learned the hard way.
But by grading so much,
that's one of my favorite parts of your show is when you send something in that you think's going to go one way and you get it back. You never get mad. You never get overly mad. You're like, they come back like I thought.
Because they're right.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, how you gonna get mad at somebody when they're right? Why am I gonna get mad at them when I was wrong and they were right? And 99% of the time is that, but it could be a handling issue on their side. I mean, there could be reasons why it shouldn't be like that. I didn't start doing this for a living to lose my temper ever.
Oh,
or stress out.
Man, that's what I gotta say.
We're talking funny books, guys. I mean, I know there's serious money on the table for some of these, but if it's not fun, man, get another hobby or do something for a living.
That's what cracks me up though, is that you sent it was something somewhat expensive. Like you sent in, or maybe you cracked it to think you got a better grade, and it comes back lower, and you're like, and Rachel's laughing, and you're just keeping calm. That cracks me up.
Here's the thing about an 8.0. I think the number tells a story every time. If a book comes back 8.0, it might have a bent corner, and that's because you're not going to have a bent. And I'm talking small. So I deal with
once it has one thing, it can't get higher than a certain grade, right?
Right. It prohibits the book from ever being more. It can be a gem mint 10.0 and have a bent corner, and it is now a 9.0. There are some exceptions when a book is like Rachel said, if you're talking about a very old book and it's rare and it's scarce, and that was what's wrong with it, I doubt they'd give that a 9.0. But CGC is not 100% consistent. They're consistent enough to accomplish what they've accomplished, which is making books. We trust them for the most part. All of us, we all trust them to the most part, you know. But like the last interview you had where you said, "Don't you know you're supposed to change the slabs every 7 years?" I'm like, yes, I know, because they used to say that, and I think that. But I can tell you, if you keep a book in a slab for 20 years, an original slab that came out in the early 2000s, which is now, right? If you keep handling that book, the grade's going to go down and going to go down because they weren't airtight. The sleeves they put inside, you literally just pull them open. They're not adhered. They're not melted together, and they kind of move around a little bit. I have cracked so many books. It's a misconception that here's one of my pet peeves. Hey, this is an old case, so you should pay more for it. No, because I should pay less because that book's been in the case for 30 years getting bumped around.
Original case.
Yeah.
Well, people try to say, well, they graded harder back then, so therefore it's probably a much higher grade than what's on there. But you're right; it probably, you know.
Well, not only that, like I don't think a lot of people know. CGC does not guarantee the grade. They guarantee the authenticity of the book, right? Because in theory, you could have a high grade book, but you could throw it against the wall and the book is damaged in the case. It's not cracked open, but it would still say the same number. So they don't guarantee the grade. That's right. Just guarantee the authenticity of the book is all they guarantee.
And the status. So if it's Blue Label, for instance.
Yes. Correct.
You know, and going back to what I said earlier, that's really why CGC was necessary. It really is great assurance. Yeah. How can you assure me that this is really a 9.0? You know, so you know, as you go back older and older in genres, the grades are going to go lower and lower. Where an 8.0 might be the highest graded copy of something.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Now CBCS, their books are forever books, correct? They're slabs. Is that correct? CBCS.
The CBCS is what?
Forever.
CBCS, you don't have to re-slab their books, correct? They
have better slabs. I don't know. I know that
didn't Borak say that you don't have to re-slab them?
I think they do a better job. I mean, I hate saying that out loud, but I don't like the resale value on them. That's why I don't get them.
They need to do a better label. Like that's the problem. Like
I don't know what.
I like that they verify signatures and stuff, which I wish CGC did.
Yeah,
outside of the CGC.
See, I like what CGC does with signatures more than I like what CBCS does because
of, like, security.
Some people.
Well, also you got to think, right? CGC makes a ton of money on their signature events, and when you say you'll only give the gold label if they watch it be signed, it puts a premium on people sending their books to their event.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's like from their perspective, at this point, there's no reason that CGC should ever change because they've built the premium into their process.
You know, there's an old saying that pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, people have gotten so greedy in the comic business. If it's some local comic book store owners or if it's CGC, it's like, how can I wet my beak on all this money?
Yeah.
You know, so I really thought they made a mistake when they sent out those slabs that were with the invisible comic book.
Yep.
Oh,
the acetate gate.
Or gave or gave out those grades on those covers on that Miles Morales book.
That's the acetate.
The acetate covers. Those are things that really concern me for them and what they are. But like, how many signings? They have 20-something signings going on right now.
Oh, it's crazy. They announce one every other day, I feel like.
I don't even try to keep up.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I don't know if you guys watch Swagglehoss. We actually just interviewed him, so he'll be coming out in a couple weeks. But he had a video this week, and he was exactly right. He's like, CGC is not necessarily here anymore to support the hobby. They're here to be like what is he? He's like, they're more into the creation of collectibles than they are into the support of collectibles. And that's what they're doing with how many signature series events that they have. And it also makes it recurring business for them. Because like at some point there are going to be no books left to slab, but if you're resending them in to be signed, they get to recrack them, reslab them. So it's, from a business perspective, I understand what they're doing.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's almost like the U.S. Mint or anyone that you have to really respect their process and know that they have the best professionals.
100%. 100%.
That they're not. Really, you can go back to the Promise Collection and start a little head scratching, because if you guys are familiar with the Promise Collection, are you guys familiar with that collection?
I know of it. I know of the story, but I don't know what you're necessarily alluding to.
They cleaned, pressed, and graded every one of those books. So, okay, that doesn't bother me. Some of the grades are questionable. To Rachel's point, she goes, why aren't they grading these eras? There are some defects on some of those books that got a grade that I didn't understand. It doesn't look right. Well, they got skin in the game because they pay a percentage.
Yeah.
You pay them a percentage for a book that high value. So if it's a little higher graded, you get a little more money.
Yeah.
And they also had Heritage was the auction house. So they had this, team of people that are about making money. I'd rather them, I get it. You got to make money. I'd rather them be about grading books and being the best at that.
100%. 100%.
Let's do that, and I'll pay you. I don't mind. I never complain about how much they charge. That's not the problem. I just don't want them in the collectibles business.
Yeah.
I personally don't like buying manufactured collectibles. The things that I like most were supposed to be thrown away. The history of a comic book back in the day. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
They tied them up with twine. Twine, right?
Yeah.
And I mean tight. So how many comic books have I looked at that have the two divots and then that little squiggly line because it's the twine line, right?
Or the ones that were folded in half.
Throw them on the curb. Throw them. People are cutting them. People are spraying the top when they didn't sell last week. I mean, that's what my comic books have gone through.
Yeah, I mean, well, not to mention like all the books that had like pinups with them or things that you were meant to cut out and things like that. That now,
all that stuff.
or tattoos that now, if your book is worth way more if it has the tattoos. Yeah,
Lakeside tattoos. How did no one take out these 3D glasses to look at this Flash Gordon comic? What is going on?
What happens if the tattoo is still on your body and you have the book? Does that count?
Here's a book. Here's my tattoo.
Yeah,
you can't buy this part.
Yeah, I think it's Fantastic Four 200, right? That has Lakeside tattoos in it as well.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah, that one's lesser known. I didn't realize that. You said that on one of your other shows, and I was starting to look for that one too. Yep.
Oh, I'm sure people are like trying to figure out a way to take them out and put them in while they're.
Oh no! I know a guy that does that exact thing, and gets away with it. I know a guy that does it.
But that's my question. Is that I asked somebody else about this? Can you marry that tattoo? Can you marry the Marvel value stamp? Well,
no, because the Marvel value stamp you cut out, right? Yeah. The tattoos you could reinsert them by taking out the staples and then putting them in.
Yeah,
but you have to take out the staples. So is that?
Well, so here's the thing. So what a lot of people don't know is to do that you have to use non-metallic tools. So this is what I don't do this. This is just talking to the guy that I know. Because if you use metallic tubes,
some guy that I know.
Oh no! If you use metallic tools, the softer metal, which will be the staple, will get marks on it that they can detect, and then they'll dig it for restoration.
Yeah.
If you use the wooden tools, that won't happen, and there's a higher chance they won't realize that the staples were taken out and put back in.
So if you have a lower grade Hulk 181 and a higher grade one missing the stamp,
you don't even need. Oh wait, the stamp you can't do because the stamp you cut out.
No, but you take out the one with the stamp, the lower grade one with the staples, with your wooden screwdriver, whatever you got there,
and marry it with a higher grade cover.
Well, but then you gotta be careful that the page quality is the same, right? Because if they can detect that, right? The tattoos though, they're in numerous books and they're all the exact same tattoo envelope.
Oh.
So this guy I know, he's got, and not all of them are ASM 238, which costs a lot of money. A lot of them are just like $5 books. So he has massed like this stack of tattoo packages, right? And then he goes and I'm not joking. Like he finds ASM 238s that have high grade potential and that don't have the tattoos, buys them on the cheap, puts the staples in, and he's gotten a couple 9/8s with it.
Wow.
So he's taking the green labels. He's taking books that would get a green label and putting the tattoo and getting away with it.
And getting a blue label.
Here's what's interesting. I think that there's a part of collecting that might drive some people to do things that are less scrupulous.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's morally a good thing to do. I'm just saying, like, I know a guy that does this.
Do it.
I've known this since the day I first ever collected anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who try to take advantage of a situation because they can. Right. And that's not a counterfeit. I mean, you're still dealing with lakeside tattoos, and it's not, on some levels, it's not a big deal. But I think what concerns me a little bit is today people are using a lot of chemicals on books and doing a lot of blue light treatments and other things that I'm starting to get concerned, because I don't do that. And I do clean and press books, but I'm what I call a conservative presser. It's conservation to me. If I can't get a 9.8, I'm not going to try to make it a 9.8. And if I can't get a 9.2, I'm not going to try to make, there are things that I think may not be good for the life of a comic. And one thing about comic books that I know at the age of 59 is that they should outlive me. Not every comic book that I'm collecting in a bag and a board, putting in a dark box, they're all going to be around after I'm gone. Someone else is going to own them. There's a provenance to these things, and then hopefully someone else can own them. Well, I don't know if you throw that thing under a blue light for 9 hours, if in 5 years it's not going to turn to dust,
Yeah.
Now, when there's a proof of concept out there and we have some real experience with it, maybe I'll feel different. But if you look at a copy of a book from 1952 that's bone white, it doesn't look right. I mean, that paper doesn't do that. And I see that and I'm like, well, I'm not, and I'm only speaking for myself. I don't do that because I think it would start to make me feel like I'm going to get, what if I get caught? Anything I do today should not be what if I get caught.
Yeah.
What if they know I'm doing
CBC
this?
is now giving purple labels for this stuff now when they catch it. So
yeah, but they get a little glad-handed too with their purple labels. So they've been training this group of people for like the last year and a half, and you can tell they're starting to go into different tiers because there's like this learning curve period that you're really strict, right? And Rachel was so strict, and it was like great, and it was like not great because I'd get my feelings hurt. I'd have a stack of books and say, okay, what do you think? I think these are all 9.6. Well, this one looks like an 8.5. This one, I'm like, what? And really, sometimes it was because she's really used to like a gem mint looking book. And we've talked, about staples and misalignment and some other things. So I think there's a seasoning that has to come with a grader, that if you look at a book in hand and you have it in your hand, what do you think that book is without grading it?
Yeah.
Like, this looks like and that does have an impact on grading. So some books present really well and you get down into the details of it and not so good.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, how it looks in hand makes a difference.
Totally. 100%.
I get down to like, how long is that spine tick? Let me measure it.
which is what you want as someone who's buying a comic book.
Yeah.
1/32 of an inch. After that, it starts to go down in grade.
Yeah.
Now there's a grading guide from CGC that could be really useful for people. But all we did was confirm a couple things. Can you have a fingerprint on a 9.6? Yes, you can.
Yep.
It says so. It says so in the grading guide, and we got one.
Yeah.
Which we were surprised.
On the Wolverine series, was it number 3? That's the black cover.
The black cover.
Yeah.
Is it number 3?
The miniseries.
Yeah, and it was my thumb. Because look, I admit it, and it wasn't now. That had a thumbprint on it in the 90s.
Like it was.
Oh yeah.
And it
that doesn't wipe off with the cloth, like when
What's
you
that?
do it now. Whenever you're cleaning your books now, does that come off?
Here's what happens if it breaks color, it's over. I mean, the acid in your body oil, if it eats through, I would say less than 50% of fingerprints come off a comic book.
Yeah, black cover though, you're pretty much done. You can't really do anything with that.
What I'm getting really good at is cleaning, and I use all non-abrasive products, absorbing products, cotton rounds. And let me tell you, cotton rounds will take color off of comic books. You can hurt a comic book a lot of ways, but I have some success with getting some fingerprints out if they haven't set. It's kind of like baking. You know how once something sets and it's there? Well, once a fingerprint sets, nothing's getting it out. Because it really, you'll see the groove lines. I just looked at one. Beautiful comic book. And I mean, I could find out if this person had a criminal record from this thing, because it was a complete fingerprint just embedded in this comic book. Now, because that book gets a 9.6 doesn't mean I want it. You know what I mean? Okay, look, CGC said it's a 9.6, and but look at that big fingerprint. So you're looking at this black cover like, that's the ugliest fingerprint I've ever seen. And I don't know if you guys have pet peeves about certain defects, you know?
Oh, yeah, of course.
I have actually started hating a particular comic book because of a defect. Like I got to sell this today. I got to get rid of it. And I never want to own that book again because I'm mad at it because I dropped it, or you know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever had that experience.
Oh yeah. Sometimes if I handle my books too much, I'll drop one. I had a good Eternals 14 and 15, the Hulk one. I dropped it and it blunted the one edge. I know it was like a 9.4, and the older book too was a high grade. I dropped it. So ticked. But yeah. What about Newton rings? You guys get a lot of Newton rings on your slabs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that bother you?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bothers you?
Oh, no, it doesn't bother me. I think it's surprising how often we get Newton rings on slabs, but I think that, I don't know.
I've never returned one.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to wait and pay and all. I don't want to do anything.
Yep. I haven't tried. I've seen them. It depends on where you get it at. And if it was like, again, something that was bothersome to the artwork on the front, then yeah, I might return it. But it depends on the light, how you do it. Again, when you shine a book into the light, you can see, right? Sometimes you can't see anything when I do this or that.
Right.
It's right. Depends on where you put it in your room. So
well, once something gets in your craw and you don't like it about a comic book, it's hard to make that go away.
Yep.
You'll see it from a mile away. It's like, that thing's got Newton rings. Get it away from me.
Yep. I do have my Punisher one, the miniseries, has a little bit of a in the top left-hand corner, a little bit of I don't know what you call it, a little bit of paper in the top left-hand corner.
It's called a bindery tear.
Bindery tear.
Yeah, and they're permissible. You can get a 9.8 with a bindery tear, but I have a couple of books that they just don't look good. Okay, so they're 9.8s, but I don't like it. When they cut a comic book and they're in a big long row, I went to a cigarette factory once, right? And I was looking around at a cigarette factory, and cigarettes start as one long thing, and hundreds of packs get cut. So when you see them, there's just this tube, and then they cut them and put filters on them and do all that. The first time I saw that was wild. Comic books are the same. When they cut them and it's not a clean cut, you'll get a lot of like 80s books will have these two cuts in the very bottom, and they're symmetrical.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? That's from the cutting process. Those bindery tears are for whenever they cut, and they're not that smooth. It makes this little tiny itsy bitsy ball of paper. Or if you got the 100 pagers or a lot of pages, and the book is shaped, how do I do it? Like that, rather than like that will tear them. A great example is Amazing Spider-Man 1. In 2015, it was a 100-page book. We bought 80 of them. Every single one has a bindery tear. We sent in, I think we got 28 9/8s. And we sent in 40. Didn't press it and cleaned it and just sent in, Rachel graded them, sent them in. And we got like 25 out of the 40 got 9/8s. They all have bindery tears, many of them on top and the bottom.
Wow.
So, yeah.
If you saw it, like I bought my Spider-Man 300, I bought from our friend Manu, and he told me it's a 9.4, but the way the book is sort of closes, you can see some of the paper you see the red cover, and then you see some of the paper behind it, the way it lays.
The way it's wrapped. Yeah, the way it's wrapped.
Yeah.
It bothered him. That's why he wanted to sell it. To me, I don't care, but I know what you mean. Like, if he told me that up front, he said that to me up front, so I knew what I was getting. That Punisher book, when I got it in, it was a 9.2, and I said, damn it has that stupid bindery tear on the top left-hand corner. Now I got to see it every time, and I was going to sell it and get another one, but I'm like, forget it. I'll keep it for now. But yeah, once it's there, it bothers you. I know what you mean. So if you didn't know about it.
That's the fun of the hobby, though. I mean, it's like the more you know and the more that you like or dislike and you have preferences, it's really funny. You can sit with collectors and you think that you're the one that's really uptight about stuff, and then you meet someone who really is.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't care what your thing is. There's someone out there that's much more intense than you are, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
I've seen your grading, your pressing room. I gotta say, you're probably pretty meticulous with your books.
He knows now.
Yeah. I just believe in doing things right.
Yeah. But I mean, I've seen like how you clean them and stuff. Like you got a lot of patience with how you're using the eraser or the absorbing. What is it called? Absorbing or something?
Absorbing, yeah.
Absorbing. So I just take a cotton round and I just go like this and put it in the press, hope for the best. And I see you like going real slow
while you were learning.
You're still improving. You're still improving the book. I mean,
yeah.
I've seen some people do crazy things pressing. I mean, I watched a video recently and a guy presses all of his books at 210 degrees for 3 minutes and puts them under glass when they're done.
Oh yeah, he opens them too, doesn't he?
Well, opening them is okay.
That just scares me.
If a book's off center and you got a spine roll and the staples are coming, let's say on the front cover, you can see the staples.
Yeah.
Margin that big, and you can actually take that book and press it flat, and then take it and put some humidity on it, put a bend on it, and do it again, and you'd be surprised. It fixes the spine roll, and it goes back. There's muscle memory in that paper, and it goes back the way it was printed. Is that easy to do? No. I mean, you got staples that could get hurt in the process, so it's just what kind of paper you stack it in. But
do you have a
I find it
humidity
surprising
chamber?
how many different ways people press comics.
Now, I've seen you use a tack iron, and do you have a humidity chamber for your books? A humidity chamber?
I don't use it anymore.
Okay.
I found if you guys see comic books out there that have a waviness to them,
yeah, I've seen that.
They have too much humidity, and I think I have a hard time controlling the humidity, even if I put in very little water and set them in there for a certain amount of time. I do it according to Hoyle. There's a book I read, Captain Mike's book on CPR. I do it exactly like he says. I have humidity counters and all that. I never liked the way that they didn't lay flat, or I can tell that they were in a humidity chamber, so I stopped using humidity chambers.
Huh.
I only use a humidity gun now, and I do it in stages, and I don't get that same effect anymore. But I humidify every page. White pages doesn't matter. It can improve the page quality up to maybe a half of a grade, but it depends on how long the humidity had a chance to get into the book before the press. I also press books a lot longer than I used to at different temperatures. So I try to stay away from things that I'm going to have to fix. I've had books where it came out all waffly like that, and I had to press it like 12 times to get it right. And by the way, you can press a book 100 times, and I can show you books that have been pressed tons of times. You cannot tell they've been pressed. There's a misconception that if you press a book, you're flattening it. No, you're straightening it. There's a difference.
Yeah. And this Scud book I got was all that waving lines, like and I was able to get it flat. It's improved, but not, greatly improved, but enough that the appearance is better. But I have a X-Men 266 that somebody must have took a piece of paper and wrote on the paper, so that you have the indentation on the book. I can't get it out with my press. I don't know how else. I press it 3 or 4 times.
It's steel ball.
A lot of
Steel ball.
Steel ball.
Okay.
So I have a what is it? What is the name of that character in DC? Wild Dog. I have a Wild Dog. Yeah. You guys know Wild Dog?
Oh yeah, I know. The hockey player, right?
He's like, no.
I don't know Wild Dog.
Hey, he's the guy with the hockey mask on, right?
Yes, he has a hockey mask and he just looks nuts. Yep. So the number 1's black, and somebody had written a message to somebody on a piece of paper, like you're saying.
Yep.
And it went through. I still balled it and pressed it at least 5 times, and it's not out yet. I don't know if I can get it 100% out. That's a project. I'll put that away, and then in a month I'll pull it back out. I'll do it one more time. Yeah, it's a steel ball with some heat, and you roll it very small, and you turn it over and do the inside cover. And there are times you can get 100% out.
You have to heat
How
the
much
ball.
is your time worth? You know.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I was hoping I could get in for a real high grade because it's a newsstand, and I got it for pretty cheap. And I thought, man, if I could turn this into like a 9.6, if he ever makes it to the MCU movie, this will, I can retire early. But
how bad is it? Is it deep?
I didn't think it was that deep. I thought pressing it once would get it out, but I can still see the line. I'll send you an Instagram picture of it. I can't get it out. It's less obvious, but it's still there.
I don't press for anyone else. I only do this for myself. But if you want, you can send me that book and I'll take a swipe at it.
You're being so nice.
Yeah. JP's making out today. Get a 9.8, get a free press.
Hey, Rohan, I'm sending you a book too.
Oh, yes.
Left out.
I am not going to make JP any offer that you could send me a book too.
All right.
Hey, we'll do that by all means. I'll find something.
Look, we share a hobby. We're passionate about this stuff. And I do think you're supposed to be nice to people and you're supposed to be gracious about what you do, or else why do it? I mean,
totally.
Let's have fun. And there's nothing better, by the way, than somebody doing something like that.
100%.
My brother collects Sugar and Spike.
I don't know what that is.
Right. So Sugar. By the way, love these books. They're DCs and they ran in the 50s, and I think they ended in 1970 was the last printed issue, and it was in the hundreds. So that was the original Rugrats.
Oh, yeah.
So Sugar and Spike were these kids that they were talking. There was word balloons, but adults did not hear what they were saying, but they're having full-fledged conversations, right? So he sent me some because he really I think he's missing 4 or 5 issues, and he has probably the highest graded set on earth. I mean, this guy has been collecting them for 35 years, right? Wow. But he sent me a couple to press. The glee that he had when they got corrected, because some of these books you can't find them in over very good. But he keeps looking. Here's the deal. If you do this long enough, you can get whatever you want as long as you're willing to wait like him 40 years.
I know. I don't I can wait that long.
You want it right now.
You're only 40, man.
Instagram.
You're only 40.
But the incremental the rise of cost is going to make something just out of reach at some point. I'm thinking that's why I want to get them now. But you're right.
Don't worry, it's gonna crash again. At the next crash, you dive in.
That's what I want to do. We were hoping to do that. If
you guys were going to choose one series that you could complete, if you are into that kind of thing, is there a series you would complete?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's a top. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's no better run. I mean, how do you argue against ASM? The original ASM run, right? The only thing I think you can compare to it would be Fantastic Four. But I think if you're picking a run that you can have, I just don't know how you don't pick ASM.
Both so hard to fill.
All of volume 1, say?
Yeah.
1 to 400 probably.
Is that you too?
Yeah, I would probably do ASM or Batman. Those would be the two I would pick.
2 different things.
Yeah.
Because Batman, if you're going 1 to probably 400 is where I'd stop on Batman too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or just the Rogues Gallery. Both of them have great Rogues Gallery.
The best.
I don't, like I said earlier, I don't read books, and I got some grief from it for not reading. So I picked up Exo Manowar. Did you ever read Exo Manowar?
I have them. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved that back in the 90s.
Valiant. Yes.
Jim Shooter was writing for that. I was looking to buy 1 through 4 or 1 through 5 maybe on eBay. I couldn't find it for a reasonable price. I had the trade paperback in a long box.
Yep.
Read it. It was terrible. I didn't think it was that great. I was so excited to finally read a whole 4 comics. I was like, this sucked. It wasn't great. It wasn't Stephen King. Nothing against Jim Shooter. And then I started reading Miracle Man. I didn't think that was that good either yet. I mean, all this Alan Moore, Jim Shooter, I'm like, Stephen King is the guy who can write. These guys, I didn't think it was that great. So the artwork was awesome, but
you're so controversial.
I'm not a Kirby fan either.
Don't get him started on Jack Kirby. He and I oppose.
I do not like Jack Kirby art.
I did not like Jack Kirby for a long time. I thought he drew people like they were squares.
They do have
like
square heads.
Everything's square. But I love him now. But it doesn't matter what I like. It matters what you like. And the thing is that I find interesting, some people might want to give someone grief because they slab their books, or some people might want to give people grief because they don't care about grade, or they do care about grade,
or they don't read the comic.
Or they don't read. I just collect for covers. Like that's some kind of travesty. Here's what I think is beautiful. They're your comic books, man.
Yeah.
You can like them any way you want. And I don't care how you like them. Chances are we can have a really good conversation about comic books.
Totally.
That's
to be a stickler at that? Come on.
It's and Dave, I'll point out, before we even got on air, you were like, we won't go an hour 45. Here we are at an hour 50.
I knew we would go this long.
You know,
we always have a lot to say.
My daughter knows me so well, and I'll say something, and in her mind, she knows exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. And it's not what I think.
That's exactly why your show works, because there's the chemistry when you guys are on screen. That makes it fun, right? You know, so I think that's the coolest part.
I'll be there in 10 minutes, and Rachel will look at someone. He'll be here in 40.
Yeah.
She's the best. I love working alongside my oldest daughter.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's really special. So, but yeah, this has been a ton of fun.
Rohan, you still with us? I guess his kid pulled the cord. I don't know. He's
there.
Back.
We go.
No, here I am. I was saying thanks for coming on. This has been a ton of fun. But yeah, this has been great.
Super
Time
nice
flies, like JP and I said. Like we can keep talking forever, but I definitely got to start putting the kids down here pretty soon.
Yeah, we have to move on with our day, I think. Too.
You guys have to pack and ship 150 books, so we don't want to.
Yeah, you guys got work to do.
I owe you both a raw 9.8, and really, JP, if you want to, you can send me that book and I can take a swipe at it. I don't do that for other people, and I'm not going to charge you, but I like challenges. Plus I can kind of tell you if it's going to come out, because if I can't get it out, it probably won't come out.
No, I believe that. I've seen, like I said, I saw the room, how you do them. So I'll send you some pictures. If you think you can do it, great. And I'll try to find a book that might be of interest to you. I'll send along with it. So, but I appreciate that. I don't know if I'll have something as cool as what I've seen you have, but I'll try to find something that might be obscure and cool.
But there's not a value attached to what I think is cool. I was telling Rachel,
that's what I mean.
My collection
like something
is so goofy.
Something goofy that might be a horror book or something. I'll see what I got, but I'm trying to find something that you'll say, "Oh, that's pretty cool." So
okay, we'll do a trade then.
All right, that works.
And whatever you trade me, I'll be happy with it.
You're gonna get that Sailor Moon 35 coming your way.
Hey, there we go. I don't have one single
rare
copy of that. I want you to know.
That's right. So Rachel and Dave, I appreciate you guys being on today.
Thank you guys so much for inviting us.
A lot of fun. And we'll let you know when the show airs, if you guys want to, have it mentioned on yours. So you guys,
sure.
When you guys do your live sale, we'll let you know. But
other
than that,
it's a shout out.
Thanks a lot, you guys. Yeah. Really nice meeting you. Hope to see you at some upcoming show.
Are you guys going to be at SummerCon in Puyallup?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'll see you there.
We were going to have a booth, but I decided that I'm too busy doing my claim sales to have a booth at that one. But we have a booth at Rose City, and then we have a booth over at Grit City in October.
Okay, yeah, but we'll definitely keep in touch, and we'll definitely at least meet up at SummerCon.
I'm jealous. You get to see with West Coast and with Dave and Rachel, so I'm jealous. I'm 3,000 miles away.
Fly out here, JP. You fly.
I have to.
Fly out that
sun.
Fly out.
I have to.
Fly
it's
out
only
that
out for 2 months. It only comes out for a minute, and it's like now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys are great. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
So much.
We'll see you guys.
Bye.
Good night.
You too.